You are 43 years old and you are closing a data center deal in Reno when the call comes. Not a dramatic call, no shouting, no crisis music in the background of your life. Just your chief of staff, Marcus. His voice flat in the way it gets when he is managing his own reaction to something. He says that Senator Harlan Voss has died. Cardiac event, they're calling it. Private residence. 71 years old. You say nothing for 4 seconds, which is long enough that Marcus says your name once, quietly, to check if the line is still live. You tell him you'll call back. You set the phone face down on the hotel desk and look out at the Nevada sprawl below you, at the flat brown distances that feel nothing like the East, and you do the math. It is not cold math. You would prefer it to be cold, but it isn't. Voss was on the Commerce Committee, the Appropriations Subcommittee, and the informal working group on data infrastructure legislation that 3 of your companies depend on for favorable depreciation schedules. He was also the man who, 11 years ago, when you were trying to get your second fund off the ground after your first exit and the market was treating you like weather, made a single phone call that got you in the room with a sovereign wealth fund that wrote you a check for $400 million. You liked Voss. You are not sure that word is accurate, but it is the one that comes. You liked him the way you like a structure that holds weight, functionally, with respect for what it does. His death is the moment everything shifts, not because Voss mattered more than others, but because his death is the third in 18 months. Senator Claremont in October, a stroke. Congressman Adeyemi in the spring, a car accident on Route 7 that the NTSB ruled driver error. And now Voss. 3 people from the same informal coalition around the same set of issues, and suddenly you are looking at a map where the roads you assumed were permanent have washed out. You call Marcus back. You tell him to cancel the Reno closing, to push it 2 weeks, to handle it. Then you get on your plane and you fly east. And somewhere over Utah, you realize that you have been operating for the last decade on borrowed infrastructure, not financial infrastructure, but political infrastructure that you did not build and do not own, and that you have been acting as though someone else's architecture would hold your weight indefinitely. That is the mistake, not a moral mistake, not yet, a strategic one. And you are, at your core, a person who corrects strategic mistakes before they become something worse. By the time you land at Dulles, you have decided to stop renting and start building. What follows is not a montage. It is 7 years of specific, granular, exhausting decisions, most of them unglamorous. You hire a director of government relations from a firm where she had been doing what you now intend to do for other clients, and you pay her twice what she was making because you want her undivided attention and because you understand that loyalty is a product with a market price like any other. Her name is Christine Yao, and she is the person who teaches you, not in any single conversation but across 100 of them, the difference between donating to politics and investing in it. Donating is what you were doing before. You wrote checks, large ones, to PACs, to campaigns, to party committees that sent you plaques and invitations to dinners where people with your net worth stood in ballrooms and congratulated each other on their civic engagement. That world is not nothing, but it is not the machine room. The machine room is where the committees are set, where the staff directors who actually draft legislation work 18-hour days on salaries that make them permanently susceptible to better offers, where the floor schedules are negotiated, where the amendments are written at midnight by people whose names will never appear in any article about the bill they shaped. Christine walks you through the machine room, and you see for the first time how small the actual lever is, and how few people know where it is, and how many people with money far greater than yours are still standing at the decorative exterior, writing checks to people who take photos with them and then walk inside and do as they are advised. You start with staff, not senators. Senators are expensive and obvious and come with visibility you don't yet want. You start with the people around senators. You fund fellowships. You endow research positions at policy institutes that feed directly into legislative offices. You hire people from those offices into your companies at compensation that makes them, frankly, set for life. And you treat them well enough that their former colleagues watch and note what loyalty to your ecosystem produces. You are building a professional community, a gravitational field, and you are patient about it in the way you have always been patient about long horizon investments, which is to say that you are not patient at all inside, but you have learned to perform patience because the alternative is to rush and ruin. By year 3, you have relationships with 19 members of the Senate. Not Owned, that word is wrong, or at least incomplete. Relationships, which means that when you call, the call is returned, which means that when you express a concern about a piece of legislation, that concern is transmitted to staff who actually read the bill language, which means that when a nominee for a regulatory position is being evaluated, your assessment of their expertise is solicited and, more often than not, weighted. You did not buy this. You built it, which is different, and the difference matters to you more than it probably should, given that the outcome is largely the same. The moral question arrives, as moral questions tend to, not as a thunderclap, but as a low-grade, persistent discomfort that you keep setting aside. You are sitting in a conference room in your Washington office when one of your team brings you a briefing on a pharmaceutical pricing bill that, if it passes in its current form, will affect a healthcare data company you acquired 18 months ago. The bill is, on its merits, probably good for people who cannot afford medication. You know this. You do not dispute it. You sit with the briefing and you feel the thing you have felt before. The place where your interests and someone else's well-being occupy the same space and push against each other. And you have to decide what kind of person you are. You tell Christine to find the provisions that affect your company and to work with the sponsor's staff to modify them in ways that don't gut the bill's consumer protections. This is, you tell yourself, the responsible path. You are not killing the bill. You are refining it. You are bringing expertise to a process that benefits from expertise. You are not wrong about any of this. You are also not being fully honest about the fact that your first instinct was to kill the bill entirely, and that the responsible path you've chosen is still a path that ends with your company protected. You live with this. You get better at living with it, which is its own kind of warning sign that you learn to ignore. By year 5, you have 19 relationships that have become 27, and the word relationships has started to feel like a euphemism. You are funding, through a structure that Christine and your legal team designed over the course of 8 months, approximately a third of the outside spending in 6 Senate races. Not all in your preferred direction. You have learned, watching others overreach, that monoculture is fragile, that the appearance of balance is itself a form of structural protection. You back 2 candidates whose positions on your core issues are not ideal because they are likely to win, and because you have found that a senator who owes you nothing is harder to work with than a senator who owes you something manageable. You play both sides of certain races with calibrated asymmetry, enough to be meaningful to the winner, not enough to be embarrassing if examined. You are examined. Of course you are examined. There is a piece in a national publication in year 6, a long, carefully reported piece that maps your network and names your relationships and calls the structure you have built, in language that is designed to be alarming, a shadow infrastructure of political control. You read it on a plane because you read everything about yourself on planes, where you have privacy to react without an audience. The piece is largely accurate. This is the thing that stays with you. It is not wrong. It has framed what you do in the most charged possible register, and you can disagree with the framing, but the underlying facts, that you have built what you have built, that it operates as it operates, those are not errors. Your communications team wants you to respond. You don't. You call 2 of the senators named in the piece, not to discuss the article, but to check in, to be visible and calm, to signal that you are not rattled. Because rattled money is money that people start to distance themselves from. Both calls are returned within the hour. You take this as the information it is. What nobody outside the machine room understands, what the piece got wrong, not in fact, but in texture, is that the system does not feel like control when you are inside it. It feels like maintenance. You are not issuing orders. You are not telling senators how to vote in any crude, transactional way that would make for satisfying journalism. What you are doing is more diffuse, and in some ways, more total. You are shaping the informational environment in which decisions get made. You fund the think tanks that produce the policy papers that become the intellectual framework for legislation. You employ the people who go on to become the staff directors who write the bill language. You have, over 7 years, made yourself one of the primary nodes through which information and money and opportunity flow in a system that runs on all 3. Controlling the nodes is not the same as controlling the network. It is better than that. The crisis, when it comes, is not about legislation. It is about a man named Delegate Prescott, a state-level official in a mid-Atlantic state who has been building a case, not a legal case, a political case, a case in the old sense of accumulating evidence and waiting for the right moment, against the structure you have built. Prescott is not bought by your network. This is notable because almost everyone in his position is, if not by you, then by someone, and the someone is usually upstream of you in some way that makes neutralizing them manageable. Prescott is independently wealthy, mildly idealistic in a way that reads to you as either admirable or dangerous, depending on your mood, and he has spent 2 years building relationships with a journalist at a different publication, one with a larger readership than the first, and together they are preparing something larger than the piece in year 6. You know this because you have a source inside Prescott's office, not a spy, that word is wrong again, or at least operationally inaccurate, a person who works for Prescott and who, for reasons of their own that you have chosen not to examine closely, passes you information periodically. You have never asked them to do anything in return. You have simply made yourself useful to them in small ways over time, which is the same methodology scaled down, and which is why you recognized what was happening before it was formalized.